We talk a lot about vinyl scams, but one that is kind of, in my opinion, is a bit of a scam, but it's actually orchestrated by the record labels, not just resellers. Historic recordings. What are the ethics behind them? Should they exist? Do we as collectors love them, hate them? Let's get into it. So this is a hot button issue right now. We're just past Record Store Day at the time of filming this, and one of the titles that kind of has been beyond the Taylor Swifts or whatever, one title that I have seen posted more and more often than anything else, and for all the wrong reasons, is the Art Blakey title that was done by Gearbox. And people are pretty upset because they felt like they were lied to, they were deceived. What they got is essentially a garbage historic recording instead of something that they figured might sound decent. This was kind of interesting because I, for one, have been duped by historic recordings before where the label has marketed it using language like, oh, it's from the soundboard recordings, master from the original tape, or like puts you there, or like there's some way that they sell it to make you feel like it's not going to be shit. But it is shit, and they know it's shit, but they go ahead and do it anyways. And the thing about the Art Blakey one that I think upset people the most was that, and I'm just going to read off what it said on the Record Store Day website. This was the description for the record leading up to the release. Previously unreleased, historically important, a gift from the jazz gods. Available for the first time as an official release in partnership with the Art Blakey estate. This is the only known recording with this Jazz Messengers lineup. This RSD 2023 release comes with a QR code which accesses almost 5 hours of content, essential for the true Art Blakey enthusiast. So they do say historically in that blurb, however, they make note that it's done in partnership with the Art Blakey estate, so it's at least officially licensed. The family of Art Blakey has heard this and says, okay, it's good enough to record, so for me, I'm like, okay, I have at least some expectation that it's not going to be complete crap. However, people were listening to it and were like, wait a minute, this is garbage. To Gearbox's credit, but also they kind of feel like I kind of feel like they did this as sort of a cop-out, but they put on the back in small like mice type, they put, and I quote, "A note about sound quality. The spirit of releasing this record is to uphold the true value of Record Store Day, where previously unreleased treasures are brought to the public at large through their local record stores. We have tried our best to restore the audio and reduce the amount of distortion that can be heard. Despite our efforts, this is still a lo-fi recording, but due to the historical importance of the Jazz Messengers lineup, we feel it is our obligation to make it available for everyone to hear. By scanning the QR code inside, you will be able to download 3 hours of exclusive additional recordings." So there's a couple of things that kind of pissed me off about this. First of all, it is mice type on the back where you typically would see like copyright information, credits, that kind of stuff. Most people aren't reading those unless you're at home listening to the record and you're really like obsessing over like liner notes, that kind of stuff. Second, this is a Record Store Day release, meaning that people are grabbing this and putting in their stack and getting out of the store as fast as possible. You are not able to physically, due to the nature of Record Store, grab the record, take time to hum and haw about it, and maybe I'm not gonna grab this. And you like sneak through the whole like line of people and reshelve it. Like that just doesn't happen. So it's like that either needed to be on the hype sticker or something to actually properly bring attention to it. The thing that upsets me the most about it, however, is that they made a point of saying for everyone to hear, which is a great concept, but you only press 1,800 of them. And as of right now, it's not available online. So actually, when you say for everyone to hear, you mean 1,800 people. If it was really the case, you should have put it on streaming services, maybe at least YouTube, so the family could make some ad revenue. I think that an Art Blakey rare release on its own warrants enough fandom that people would buy it. 1,800 copies isn't a lot of copies. My local store actually didn't get this one in. They posted it to their website after, about a week later. And I would have bought it if I was in the store, but I didn't after seeing all the backlash. And I think that if the company had been more transparent off the top, we wouldn't be in this issue. People would be kind of like, it would be like, there's been other titles like this where it's like people kind of argue about it, the hardcore fans love it. some of the more casual fans don't like it. Like me, for example, I'm more casual. I have a bunch of Art Blakey's like more classic records, but I'm not an obsessive fan who owns everything and is really going to appreciate this. So, I mean, I would just avoid it, or I would buy it and, you know, have some good fun online complaining about it. But I would have known about it beforehand, and the fact that this wasn't widely known, I think, is where the big issue is. Just for me personally, too, I've said, like, I generally avoid anything that I think is historic. Every time I see a title by, like, a group or an artist I really like that I don't recognize, I look it up, and most of the time people complain about it. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of historic recordings, particularly on vinyl, because I've complained ad nauseum about records that you listen to once and then they go on your shelf forever. With historic recordings, there is pretty much guaranteed that there's no replayability of them. They are strictly collector's pieces. If you're a hardcore fan who maybe wants to hear different versions of, you know, iconic songs, how they were performed live, different arrangements, that kind of thing, I get it. It's fun to do that, and it's fun to compare them. But for me, I don't really get it, and I've always avoided this. I'm a big Iggy Pop fan. I have been burnt 3 or 4 times with Iggy and Stooges albums that I thought were going to sound decent and they were garbage. So I will not buy Iggy Pop live albums anymore. And there's been a couple record store releases that I've avoided because of that. But yeah, it's just not something I'm into. And that's where I kind of think that the ethics comes in, because this is a release that had to take up a spot at a record pressing plant that could have been pressing something else. This is something that costs $40, and it's just a historic piece. Something that I thought was cool was that Pink Floyd released a bunch of these historic recordings a year and a half ago or so, and they were a bunch of historic live performances that were all bootlegs, but they had the rights to them, and they wanted to maintain the rights to them, so they uploaded them on Spotify. But it was fun for an afternoon just to like go and hear like 5 different versions of Echoes throughout different tours and how it evolved, and you know, that was interesting. I thought that was kind of cool, but I was so happy that those were not releases, because if that was put out as a record store day release, it would have sold like gangbusters and everyone would have been pissed off with what they got. So honestly, I think that historic recordings are important. I don't personally love them, but I think they should be heard by a wider audience. Record labels may be doing smaller runs to sort of finance that historic nature and being able to preserve it. I love that. I'm all about history and preservation. It's just, this is not the way to do it. Misleading your customers into thinking that something's gonna be one thing and it's different, and relying on people to be reading the entire front and back of a record before purchasing it in a high pressure situation. Not cool. But that's just my take on, I mean, this Art Blakey release that I actually don't even own. I'm just relying on my opinions about historic recordings in general. But do you love historic recordings? I know that, like, for example, I'm a big David Bowie fan, and there's random, like, gray market releases that come out all the time, and I avoid them. But if you're a Bowie fan who has hundreds of Bowie releases, that's probably appealing to you as, at the very least, a collectible piece to put with your million other Bowie records. But also see, maybe that was a tour you saw in person. Maybe that was an era you really liked, and you want to see like that performance of the songs compared to like the official release. That's totally cool. So I'd be interested to hear what your opinions are on historic recordings. Do you love them, hate them, avoid them? Do you think that record labels should be held accountable to put out stuff that is of better quality? Personally, I think that's the case, especially with the quality, particularly of jazz releases that's coming out these days. It's kind of unacceptable to not be very, very clear about how good or bad a record is going to sound. But that's just how I feel about the matter. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.